The skunk ape is a large and hairy human-like mythical creature purported to inhabit the forests and swamps in the southeastern United States, most notably in Florida. It is often compared to, synonymous with, or called the cousin of Bigfoot, a prominent subject within North American popular culture. Many dubious articles have been presented in an attempt to prove the skunk ape's existence, including anecdotal sightings, disputed photographs, audio and video recordings, and casts of large footprints. The majority of mainstream scientists have historically discounted the existence of the skunk ape, considering it to be the result of a combination of folklore, misidentification, and a hoax, rather than a living animal. The skunk ape has permeated into the popular culture of the southern United States, especially in Florida. The skunk ape is commonly described as a bipedal human or ape-like creature, approximately 5 to 7 feet tall and covered in mottled reddish-brown hair. The skunk ape is often reported to be smaller in stature compared to traditional descriptions of Bigfoot from the northern United States and Canada. It is named for its foul odor, often described as being similar to a skunk. Contemporary descriptions of the skunk ape in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama folklore have occurred since European settlers first occupied the region. In 1818, local newspapers reported a story from what is now an area in Florida that spoke of a man-sized monkey raiding food stores and stalking fishermen along the shore. Cryptozoologists have made unsubstantiated claims that Seminole and Miccosukee culture includes stories of a foul-smelling, physically powerful and secretive creature with a name which roughly translates to furry tall man or hairy giant. In 1929, an alleged sighting occurred at the famous and then recently constructed Perky Bat Tower at the Florida Keys. Witnesses reported that an unknown ape-like creature was drawn to the construction site. After inspecting the bat tower shortly after it had been stocked with bats, the creature shook the tower, driving off the bats before running off into the woods. In 1942, a man reported a similar creature rushing out from the brush line while he was driving down an isolated road. It was alleged to have grabbed onto his vehicle and beat on the running board and door for half a mile before departing. In a small community in Barden, in Putnam County, Florida, beginning in the 1940s, there were a number of alleged sightings of a creature that came to be known as the Barden Booger. In the 1960s, a rash of sightings in central Florida happened around Alachua County and Marion County. One such report from 1963 involved several members of a family encountering an ape-like creature around their rural home, including one instance of it approaching a window to peer inside at night. Reports of the skunk ape were particularly common in the 1950s through to the 1970s. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization has archived hundreds of alleged sightings across almost every county of Florida, beginning in 1955 into the present day. In the 1970s, two Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputies named Marvin Lewis and Ernie Milner reported that an ape-like creature stalked them through a grove before they shot at it with their firearms. They reported following a trail of footprints where they recovered hair snagged on a barbed wire fence line that had been pushed down. In 1971 to 1975, a rash of sightings occurred in Broward County and surrounding areas. Multiple eyewitnesses reported nocturnal encounters with a 5 to 7 foot ape-like creature with dark red to black fur. These events were heavily covered in newspapers, both local and in other Florida cities such as Miami, and were some of the earliest instances popularizing the term skunk ape in the state lexicon. Reports alleged that the skunk ape had invaded homes, stalked people, and killed several of a farmer's livestock, including a horse and a bull. The local police department investigated after one law enforcement officer reported striking the skunk ape with his car. Passes were formed in an effort to locate the alleged creature, but no body or evidence was found. In 1977, a failed-to-pass bill was proposed to the Florida State Legislature to make it illegal to take, possess, harm, or molest anthropoids or humanoid animals. Several Everglades wildlife tour bus operators and their guests have reported alleged sightings. In July 1997, one such operator, David Shealy, reported wildlife bait stands laden with lima bean had been raided and he noticed strange tracks surrounding them. He baited several locations with more lima beans, and multiple witnesses reported skunk ape sightings soon after. Shealy and others attributed this incident to high seasonal flooding, having driven down numerous animals into tighter ranges around higher ground. One such sighting was by Everglades tour operators Steve Goodbread and Dow Rowland. Some of their guests reported skunk ape sightings as well. Both operators claimed that 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit weather, high humidity, and the rural location would make the hoax unlikely. In 1977, a photograph of a dark, upright figure in the swamp was taken by the Fire Control District Chief Vince Dorr that he claims depicts a skunk ape. He reported observing the creature cross the road and stopped his car to capture a photograph. Within 2 weeks, over 50 people reported alleged sightings of a hairy creature within the Big Cypress National Preserve. In the year 2000, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office received 2 anonymous photos depicting a large, hairy, ape-like creature. The author of the letter claimed to be an elderly woman who reported the creature had been stealing apples from her back porch, and upon surprising it with a camera, she was afraid it was an escaped orangutan that might harm her family. The scrutinized photos, dubbed the Myakka skunk ape, remain a polarizing topic and their authenticity remains debated. One critique highlighting the photographs as a potential hoax is the subject's resemblance to a Bigfoot statue known from a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum. Sightings continue to the present day, with 48 out of 67 counties in Florida reporting the sightings since 2010. Most anecdotal reports and alleged visual evidence are deemed to be fabrication or hoaxes. Skeptical investigator Joel Nickel has written that some of the reports may represent sightings of the American black bear, possibly some suffering from mange, and it is likely that other sightings are hoaxes or general misidentification of wildlife. The United States National Park Service considers the skunk ape to be a hoax. The skunk ape has been widely adopted across Florida as an unofficial mascot for wilderness and rural culture, including appearing in roadside businesses and attractions, television commercials, and on signs. During the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, one Florida business used the skunk ape's reported foul smell to promote social distancing. The skunk ape is often the subject of conferences that host guest speakers, research presentations, trail running events, and vendors. The Grugach, also known as the Grugach, Gelt, or sometimes even the Tipperary ossuary wolfman, is a large bipedal ape-like creature that allegedly lives in Ireland. The creature appears in mythology around Ireland and is sighted only on rare occasions, but over the years has been seen all over Northern Ireland and on occasion South Ireland. Despite this, it gets very little attention as Ireland is a small place, and even though the majority is countryside, most people say there is not enough thick forest and food to support and hide a large ape, despite the fact it supports deer in some places and once even supported large megafauna. It has been estimated that the amount of forest covering in Ireland is as little as a mere 1%, with County Wicklow, home to at least one alleged Grugach sighting, having the most forest, and County Meath, not known to have any sightings, having the least. The creature is very similar to other Bigfoot-like creatures, the most well-known example being the North American Sasquatch, though unlike Sasquatch, most sightings of the Grugach describe it to be more human-like. It's normally depicted with a small, wide, high-up nose, sometimes described as piggish, a mostly flat face, a protruding brow ridge, and strangely with no sagittal crest. A sagittal crest being the crest on the skull of certain apes, such as gorillas, which give their head a cone shape, described by most alleged Bigfoot witnesses, though occasionally the crest is there. It's more similar to the Minnesota Iceman than the traditional Bigfoot depiction. It is often compared to a Neanderthal as the facial features appear similar. However, Neanderthals are believed to have only stood at 4 foot, about 1.3 meters tall on average, fully grown. Sightings of the creature are all around Ireland, though are mostly centred around Slievenora and Ballyboley. In January of 2016, a mother and Irish Bigfoot researcher Maxine Caulfield was walking her dogs in Slievenora Forest, a place believed by some to be haunted, when her dogs started acting strangely, which had happened on other occasions during her research. It was not until she got home and posted her pictures from the forest online that people noticed the strange figure in it, which her and some others who saw the picture online compared to the Grugach, which Maxine was looking for at the time. Ghost stories about Slievenora have been told since October 1942, when a US Air Force B-17 Flying Fortress bomber crashed into a mountain in the area, killing 8 of the 10 people in the plane. The photo appears similar to a ghillie suit, though its arms appear to be a branch, which could be explained by the creature holding the branch while its hand is covered by its fur or the sleeve of the suit, or it walking past a branch when the photo was taken. However, despite the photo likely being a hoax or misidentification, another alleged sighting in the area adds some credence to it. Around 4:30 in the evening on the 14th of July 2017, a wildlife photographer and her husband went out to Slievenora Forest, Northern Ireland. She says it was raining very heavily and they were walking their usual routes when they heard a strange howling noise. They hadn't went far into the forest when her German Shepherd started barking at the noise. At that point, the howl sounded quite close, but they couldn't find the source of the noise. A few seconds later, the noise stopped, then started again. This happened 4 times. She says she had heard the noise before in the same area of the forest, but she was alone with the dogs, so she doubted herself a bit. She told researcher Deborah Hatswell she intended on going back there without the dogs to see if she'd still hear it. She reported to the same researcher that on the 17th of July 2017, she returned to the area with her phone, but she didn't hear anything. She brought her partner's smaller dog Barney with her, and he stopped randomly near where she says she found a double X made from large tree trunks. It's worth noting that in other parts of the world, field researchers also report this in alleged Bigfoot habitats. The dog just stood there sniffing the wind with his ears up and one paw off the ground as if he had smelled something. Later on, her partner and her both got the feeling of being watched after the dog started doing the same thing again. She also says that while it may be unrelated, she lost the dog's ball in the area and looked for a long time without finding it before going back the next day and finding it laying in the middle of the trail. She says she will go back again until she finds something to prove her story. However, no more information is given and nothing else has been reported in that forest. In Tipperary, there are historical accounts of wolfmen warriors and of wolfmen. However, all modern-day sightings of hairy humanoids describe ape-like creatures which can also make howling noises, except for a select few in the Republic. In 1997, 2 men claimed that they were in the allegedly haunted Ballyboley forest when they heard what they called a loud flapping sound. They thought nothing of it and continued walking until they heard stranger noises, such as women moaning in pain. They were horrified when they found a group of trees thickly smeared with blood. As they ran off, one of the men claims he saw 4 dark humanoid figures standing behind them, but not chasing them, where only a few seconds earlier nothing had been there. Other reports from the area describe druid rituals where animals are burned to death and campfires and teepee-shaped tree structures can be found in the forest, though the tree structures are more uncommon. A year later, a 63-year-old woman who was working as a pet sitter and her husband were walking some local dogs in Ballyboley. They approached a small patch of dead trees one day and claimed that they saw what they thought was a human crouched down in the bushes. Agitating the dogs, the creature raised its head, showing it was not human. The woman says her husband approached the creature, who growled at him when he came too close. She told him to step back, and he thought it was an escaped chimpanzee at the time until he got within 15 foot of it, and the tall figure stood up on its hind legs. They noticed the large creature was carrying an also large stick. The creature smashed its stick against the tree and then ran off at high speed. The whole thing lasted for all of about 4 minutes. She described the creature as having a chimpanzee-like face, but with a broader nose. It was covered in dark brown, black fur and was 8 foot tall. Later that year, a man claimed to have seen an ape-like creature using improvised eating utensils. The report came 1 week after a man claimed to have seen a similar creature in Suffolk in England. There are many Facebook pages about the Grugach, such as the IBRO, the Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation, and the IWRO, the Irish Wildman Research Organisation. Despite most sightings being in the north, both of these groups are based in the Republic. One, however, is based in Ballyboli Forest and frequently visits the forest to search for evidence of the Grugach. Some people running the Facebook page called Cryptids NI, Northern Ireland, went on an unsuccessful expedition to the forest and claimed that one of them had seen one looking at him in the distance before he saw it, causing it to run off. Outside of Ballyboli Forest and Slievenora Forest, the only places with consistent sightings of the Grugach persist. A man claimed that in December of 2015, he'd seen a large, upright, hairy creature wandering through the Sperrin Mountains. Though he saw it at a distance, he said it was taller than a 6-foot man and that he didn't have a gun, so he left. While leaving, he says he noticed some hunters using a map, which he noticed was somewhat strange since most hunters knew the area quite well. Another man reported to British and Irish Bigfoot researcher Deborah Hatswell that in 1998 he was on the Lurgan Road in Drumore at night when he saw a 7-foot tall humanoid creature block the road. He says that he stopped the car and saw the creature's red eyes illuminated by his headlights. In 2017, a man was in a mostly human inhabited part of Braca in County Armagh when a hairy ape-like creature stared at him. He said, "I would like to report an experience that happened to me just last month, August 2017. I was unsure about coming forward, and to be honest, I still am. I was in Braca, which borders a road and is near human habitation in County Armagh. I was out as I like to walk, and I was exploring an old stomping ground of many years from my youth. I spent a lot of time down here as a lad with my friends or on my own for hours on end. Back then the area was different, as this is now a nature reserve and is used by dog walkers on a loop walk trail. You can leave the trail and paths if you want to, but I doubt anyone does. There are 7 peat rompers, and I had walked 3 or 4 of them at least that day already, so I had been out for quite some time at this point. As I walked the loop that was the farthest from the road, I was walking close to the edge of an adjoining field. When I passed a certain spot, I heard the unusual cry of an animal. It wasn't something I could identify, but whatever it was, it sounded as if it was in distress. I walked very quietly by the way, so I didn't think I made any noise on approaching that area or spooked anything. I know even with all my walking, I see very little of the known wildlife myself. So to make a sound of distress is not something an animal would do unless it was absolutely necessary. I don't think my feet are used to treading softly and not giving the game away. So I stood and watched, keeping as quiet as I could, just listening to see if I could see where this sound was coming from or its source. I could pinpoint the general area but not the actual source of the noise. I kept looking around trying to see what it was, but I couldn't identify anything. And as I walked on my way, I was still looking back to try and see any movement in the grass and shrub. I did notice a lot of trees, and they had been drilled and a PVC capsule inserted. This, I presume, was to kill the tree and roots. Why, I don't know, as I dug one out with a knife to examine it. These capsules were in lots of little trees around me as I passed by. There were trees with capsules everywhere. Further south from the alleged sighting, 8 British soldiers claimed to have seen 4 grey aliens crossing the road, and further south from there, a man claimed to have multiple encounters with a strange reptilian creature, similar to the grey aliens in head size and shape, but much taller, more muscular, green, and having a tail. In 2012, a man posted a video on a YouTube channel, Thomas Miller, which only has one video, and has liked pike fishing in Ireland on Hybridia wobblers and Melview Fishing Lodge, ultimate fishing in Ireland. The video is called Beast of Blessington, Bigfoot spotted in Ireland, and shows a dark figure walking past 2 men who seem to be scrambling to film the creature as it walks past at a regular pace, seemingly undisturbed. The video then slows down and at the very end zooms into the subject. Almost non-existent shoulders attached to a broad, cone-shaped head is seen. The creature has thin arms and legs. In the UK and Ireland, most sightings of Bigfoot-like creatures describe more human-like creatures without the popular cone-shaped head. It is also worth noting the creature swings its arms and takes long strides, similar to the alleged Sasquatch in the famous Patterson-Gimlin film. As of now, there is very little evidence for the Grugach. The IWRO, Irish Wildman Research Organisation, has posted many possible tree structures from Ireland, as well as one picture showing a deer skull with a small amount of flesh left inside a possible structure. However, the deer may not have been killed by a Grugach, and the structures may have been made by humans. The picture of a possible Grugach in Slieve Nora may be a stump or ghillie suit, and the Beast of Blessington footage is too blurry to make out much detail. However, the same can be said for most cryptids. It is unlikely a deer would die near a tree structure. It may have been just a coincidence, but it also may have been put there intentionally. The picture and video may also be real Grugachs despite not fitting the non-crested description, as the IBRO theorised that there may be 2 types of Irish Bigfoot, one of which is similar to the Sasquatch as it creates the same tree structures. The Facebook page Cryptids NI posted a video claiming to show a possible Grugach moving in the distance. However, it has not been analysed and it is not known if there even is anything in the video. The same page also released a possible Grugach vocalisation from Ballyboley Forest, after posting many pictures of possible structures from the area. The evidence of the Grugach is limited, but not non-existent. Even in the US, Asia, Russia, and other places with more Bigfoot sightings, aggression is an uncommon characteristic. Some Bigfoot types, such as the woodbugger and the gugwa, both of which are rarely reported, are normally said to be uncharacteristically aggressive for a Bigfoot. The creatures are described as looking less human-like, and many believe they are one and the same as werewolves, whereas the Grugach, woodwose, and other human-like Bigfoot, especially so in the UK, are more timid, normally running away when seen or occasionally just tolerating the human or even being paralysed with fear. Despite the unlikelihood of an aggressive creature stalking the Irish wilderness without being seen often or even being verified to exist, there are some mostly isolated cases in which it is suspected the Grugach has been aggressive. A recent but highly dubious case comes from the Irish Bigfoot researcher Teddy Boy Bigfoot. After making multiple videos about the Grugach in a very urban area with thin forest inhabited by homeless people and visitors to the area who frequently leave litter and may have built the alleged tree structures shown in his videos, he made one video in which he went to his usual area and found an alleged tree structure. It is noted by many how it appears different to traditional tree structures found in alleged Bigfoot habitats in other parts of the world, including the few structures found by other Irish researchers. He then falls to the ground shouting and cursing, only to get back up a few seconds later after running a short distance, claiming he was hit by a rock, showing an alleged smear of blood on his forehead. If the habitat and unusual behaviours and structures hadn't already aroused suspicion among researchers, The fact there was no opening in his head for the blood to appear from bothered Welsh Bigfoot researcher and photo video analyst Bigfoot Tony, who attempted to expose what he and English Bigfoot researcher Deborah Hatswell believed was a hoax. The video was soon deleted, as was the channel Teddy Boy Bigfoot. A Barbary ape skull was once found in Ireland, and some evidence such as the worship of an Egyptian god and legends of an Egyptian princess in Scotland suggests the ancient Egyptians got to Ireland at one point. Some theorize a population of baboons, Barbary apes, or other African or Middle Eastern apes were brought to Ireland and may have a population that somehow has gone undetected. Baboons seem particularly likely to have been transported by the Egyptians, as the god Thoth was represented by a baboon in the past. It is possible that Bigfoot is some type of spiritual being, with some biblical historians and Christians claiming that they are descendant of the Nephilim giants. Other religious theories say that they may be demons, while other less religious but equally spiritual theories suggest shapeshifters or even the ghost of a Gigantopithecus, Neanderthal, or other creature. A living Gigantopithecus is often proposed as an explanation for Sasquatch, and while many say the Grugach and other more human-like Bigfoot are hominin, meaning the genus Homo or Australopithecus, some propose that they are one and the same as the largest known ape ever to live. An extant population of non-sapient hominin is considered likely by many, with many British and Irish researchers saying this is the most likely explanation. The IBRO proposes a living Neanderthal as an explanation for both the Almas and Grugach, though the Almas, they say, is less hairy and wears clothing. Welsh researcher Bigfoot Tony once stated he believes that they have a soul of some type similar to a human, though specifies his uncertainty. In Ireland, there are legends of warriors covered in hair with the heads of dogs. These legends come from Tipperary, though there are only 2 modern sightings. In 2009, an anonymous person sent a strange report filled with spelling mistakes to Deborah Hatswell, Bigfoot researcher who takes reports of obscure UK cryptids, though she also takes lesser-known owlman reports. In the cold winter of 1999 in Tipperary, an anonymous person was driving home late at night with their aunt, uncle and cousin when their garden's light illuminated what they thought was an old man walking in the streets late at night in the middle of winter when all the streetlights were off. Within the space of a few seconds, the man disappeared and was replaced by a large black dog with red eyes staring at them. The person who reported this said they had never heard of a haunted dog before, and they would have passed it off as their imagination had everyone else not seen it too. They say this happened in the road between Newport and Rarecross in South Tipperary. Another report from Ballymacward describes a man with a bear's head near a train station. The 2 witnesses attempted to talk to the creature, but it rudely told him not to talk to him. The Yeti is an ape-like creature purported to inhabit the Himalayan mountain range in Asia. In Western popular culture, the creature is commonly referred to as the abominable snowman. Many dubious articles have been offered in an attempt to prove the existence of the Yeti, including anecdotal visual sightings, disputed video recordings, photographs, and plaster casts of large footprints. Some of these are speculated or known to have been hoaxes. Folklorists trace the origin of the Yeti to a combination of factors, including Sherpa folklore and misidentified fauna such as bear or yak. The Yeti is commonly compared to Bigfoot of North America, as the 2 subjects often have similar physical descriptions. The Yeti is often described as being a large bipedal ape-like creature that is covered with brown, grey or white hair and is sometimes depicted as having large, sharp teeth. According to H. Seeger, the Yeti was part of the pre-Buddhist beliefs of several Himalayan people. He was told that the Lepcha people worshipped a glacier being as a god of the hunt. He also reported that followers of the Bone religion once believed the blood of the wild man had use in certain spiritual ceremonies. The being was depicted as an ape-like creature who carries a large stone as a weapon and makes a whistling swoosh sound. Yeti was adopted into Tibetan Buddhism, where it was considered a non-human animal that is nonetheless human enough to sometimes be able to follow karma. Several stories feature Yetis becoming helpers and disciples to religious figures. In Tibet, images of Yetis are paraded and occasionally worshipped as guardians against evil spirits. However, because Yetis sometimes act as enforcers, hearing or seeing one is often considered a bad omen for which the witness must accumulate merit. In 1832, James Princep's Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal published trekker B.H. Hodgson's account of his experiences in North Nepal. His local guide spotted a tall bipedal creature covered with long dark hair which seemed to flee in fear. Hodgson concluded it was an orangutan. An early record of reported footprints appeared in 1899 in Lawrence Waddell's Among the Himalayas. Waddell reported his guide's description of a large ape-like creature that left the prints, which Waddell thought were made by a bear. Waddell heard stories of bipedal ape-like creatures, but wrote that none, however, of the many Tibetans I have interrogated on this subject could ever give me an authentic case. On the most superficial investigation, it was always resolved into something that somebody heard tell of. The frequency of reports increased during the 20th century when Westerners began making determined attempts to scale the many mountains in the area and occasionally reported seeing odd creatures or strange tracks. In 1925, N.A. Tambazi, a photographer and member of the Royal Geographical Society, writes that he saw a creature at about 15,000 feet near Zimu Glacier. Tambazi later wrote that he observed the creature from about 200 to 300 yards for about a minute. Unquestionably, the figure in outline was exactly like a human being, walking upright and stopping occasionally to pull at some dwarf rhododendron bushes. It showed up dark against the snow, and as far as I could make out, there were no clothes. About 2 hours later, Tambazi and his companions descended the mountain and saw the creature's prints, described as similar in shape to those of a man, but only 6 to 7 inches long by 4 inches wide. The prints were undoubtedly those of a biped. During the autumn of 1937, John Hunt and Pasang Sherpa, later Pasang Dawa Lama, encountered footprints on the approaches to and at the Zemu Gap above the Zemu Glacier that were thought to belong to a pair of Yetis. In June 1944, C.R. Cook and his wife Margaret and a group of porters encountered very large bipedal prints in soft mud at 14,000 feet, which the porters said were of the wild man. The creature had come through the bushes on the steep hillside from Nepal and crossed the track before continuing up to the ridge. Cook wrote, "We laid Margaret's sunglasses beside each print to indicate its size and took photographs. These prints were strange and larger than any normal human per foot, with the great toe set back to one side, a first toe also large and 3 little toes closely bunched together." Peter Byrne reported finding a Yeti footprint in 1948 in northern Sikkim, India, near the Zemu Glacier, while on holiday from a Royal Air Force assignment in India. Western interest in the Yeti peaked dramatically in the 1950s. While attempting to scale Mount Everest in 1951, Eric Shipton took photographs of a number of large prints in the snow at about 6,000 metres above sea level. Shipton took 3 photographs, one depicting the track and the other 2 of one particular print, which was size compared by a pickaxe and boot. The footprints had 2 distinct large toes and 3 smaller digits close together. These photos have been subject to intense scrutiny and debate. Some argue that they are the best of the Yeti's existence, while others contend these prints are those of a mundane creature and have been distorted by the melting snow. Geoffrey Meldrum examined a reconstruction form of the print in 2008, noting that one of the large toes was the result of macrodactyly. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reported seeing large footprints while scaling Mount Everest. Hillary would later discount Yeti reports as unreliable. In his first autobiography, Tenzing said that he believed the Yeti was a large ape, and although he had never seen it himself, his father had seen one twice. But in his second autobiography, he said he had become much more sceptical about its existence. During the Daily Mail Snowman expedition of 1954, the mountaineering leader John Angelo Jackson made the first trek from Everest to Kachinjunga, in the course of which he photographed symbolic paintings of the Yeti at Tiban Shkampa. Jackson tracked and photographed many footprints in the snow, most of which were identifiable. However, there were many large footprints which could not be identified. These flattened footprint-like indentations were attributed to erosion and subsequent widening of the original footprint by wind and particles. On the 19th of March 1954, the Daily Mail printed an article which described expedition teams obtaining hair specimens from what was alleged to be a Yeti scalp found in the Pangbonch monastery. The hairs were black to dark brown in colour in dim light and fox red in sunlight. The hair was analysed by Professor Frederick Wood Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy. During the study, the hairs were bleached, cut into sections, and analysed microscopically. The research consisted of taking microphotographs of the hair and comparing them with hairs from known animals such as bears and orangutans. Jones concluded that the hairs were not actually from a scalp. He contended that while some animals do have a ridge of hair extending from the plate to the back, no animal have a ridge, as in the Pangbonch scalp, that runs from the base of the forehead across the pate and ending at the nape of the neck. Jones was unable to pinpoint exactly the animal from which the hairs were taken. He was, however, convinced that the hairs were not from a bear or anthropoid ape, but instead from the shoulder of a coarse-haired hoofed animal. Slavomir Ravix, in his book The Long Walk, published in 1956, that as he and some others were crossing the Himalayas in the winter of 1940, their path was blocked for hours by two bipedal animals that were doing seemingly nothing but shuffling around in the snow. Beginning in 1957, the Texas oil businessman and adventurer Tom Slick led an expedition to the Nepal Himalayas to investigate Yeti reports, with an anthropologist Professor Carlton S. Kuhn as one of its members. In 1959, supposed Yeti feces were collected by one of Slick's expeditions. Fecal analysis found a parasite which could not be classified. The United States government thought that the finding the Yeti was likely enough to create 3 rules for American expeditions searching for it. Obtain a Nepalese permit, do not harm the Yeti except in self-defense, and let the Nepalese government approve any news reporting on the animal's discovery. In 1959, actor James Stewart, while visiting India, reportedly smuggled the so-called Pangbonch hand by concealing it in his luggage when he flew from India to London. In 1960, Sir Edmund Hillary mounted the 1960-61 Silver Hut expedition to the Himalayas, which was to collect and analyse physical evidence of the Yeti. Hillary borrowed a supposed Yeti scalp from the Kumjung monastery, then himself and Kumjo Kumbi, the village headman, brought the scalp back to London, where a small sample was cut off for testing. Mark Burns made a detailed examination of the sample of skin and hair from the margin of the alleged Yeti scalp and compared it with similar samples from the Serau blue bear and black bear. Burns concluded the sample was probably made from the skin of an animal closely resembling the sample specimen of Serau, but definitely not identical with it. Possibly a local variety or race of the same species, or a different but closely related species. Up to the 1960s, belief in the Yeti was relatively common in Bhutan, and in 1966 a Bhutanese stamp was made to honour the creature. However, in the 21st century, belief in the being has declined. In 1970, British mountaineer Don Willens claimed to have witnessed a creature when scaling Annapurna. He reported that he once saw it moving on all fours. In 1983, Himalayan conservationist Daniel C. Taylor and Himalayan natural historian Robert L. Fleming Jr. led a Yeti expedition into Nepal's Barren Valley, suggested by discovery in the Barren in 1972 of footprints alleged to be Yeti by Cronin and McNeely. The Taylor-Fleming expedition also discovered similar Yeti-like footprints, hominoid appearing with both a hallux and bipedal gait, intriguing large nests in trees, and vivid reports from local villagers of 2 bears. Further interviews across Nepal gave evidence of local belief in 2 different bears. Skulls were collected. These were compared to known skulls at the Smithsonian Institution, American Museum of Natural History, and British Museum, and confirmed identification of a single species, the Asiatic black bear, showing no morphological differences between the tree bear and ground bear. In 2004, Henry Gee, editor of the journal Nature, mentioned the Yeti as an example of folk belief deserving further study, writing, "The discovery of the Homo florensis survived until so very recently in geological terms makes it more likely that stories of other mythical human-like creatures such as Yetis are found on grains of truth." In early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gates and his team Destination Truth reported finding a series of footprints in the Everest region of Nepal resembling descriptions of Yeti. Each of the footprints measured 33 centimetres in length, with 5 toes that measured a total of 25 centimetres across. Casts were made of the prints for further research. The footprints were examined by Jeffrey Meldrum of Idaho State University, who believed them too morphologically accurate to be fake or man-made, before changing his mind after making further investigations. Later, in 2009, in a TV show, Gates presented hair samples with a forensic analyst, concluding that the hair contained an unknown DNA sequence. On the 25th of July 2008, the BBC reported that hairs collected in the remote Garo Hills of northeast India by Deepu Morak had been analysed at Oxford Brookes University in the UK by primatologist Anna Nakaris and microscopy expert John Wells. The initial tests were inconclusive, and ape conservation expert Ian Redmond told the BBC that there was similarity between the cuticle pattern of these hairs and specimens collected by Edmund Hillary during Himalayan expeditions in the 1950s and donated to the Oxford University Museum of Natural History, and announced planned DNA analysis. This analysis has since revealed that the hair came from the Himalayan goral. A group of Chinese scientists and explorers in 2010 proposed to renew searches in the Shenagole forest district of the Hubei province, which was the site of expeditions in the 1970s and 1980s. At a 2011 conference in Russia, participating scientists and enthusiasts declared having 95% evidence of the Yeti's existence. However, this claim was disputed later. American anthropologist and anatomist Jeffrey Meldrum, who was present during the Russian expedition, claimed the evidence found was simply an attempt by local officials to drum up publicity. A Yeti was reportedly captured in Russia in December 2011. Initially, the story claimed that a hunter reported having seen a bear-like creature trying to kill one of his sheep, but after he fired his gun, the creature ran into the forest on 2 legs. The story then claimed that Border Patrol soldiers captured a hairy, 2-legged female creature similar to a gorilla that ate meat and vegetation. This was later revealed as a hoax or possibly a publicity stunt for charity. In April 2019, an Indian Army mountaineering expedition team claimed to have spotted mysterious Yeti footprints measuring 81 by 38 centimetres near Makalu Base Camp. The misidentification of Himalayan wildlife has been proposed as an explanation for some Yeti sightings, including the Chuta, a langur monkey living at lower altitudes, the Tibetan blue bear, or the Himalayan brown bear, also known as the Himalayan red bear. Similarly, it's possible that sightings have been deliberate hoaxes. James Randi notes that convincing costumes of gorillas or other apes have been used in films, which are more convincing than any representations of the Yeti provided by believers. Randi also argues that there would need to be many creatures in order to maintain the gene pool, and given the proposed size of the Yeti, it is hard to imagine that they have been so elusive if they are real. A well-publicised expedition to Bhutan initially reported that a hair sample had been obtained, which by DNA analysis by Professor Brian Sykes could not be matched to any known animal. Analysis completed after the media release, however, clearly showed the samples were from a brown bear and an Asiatic black bear. In 1986, South Tyrolean mountaineer Reinhold Messer claimed in his autobiography, My Quest for the Yeti, that the Yeti is actually the endangered Himalayan brown bear, or Tibetan blue bear. In 1983, Barren Valley discoveries prompted 3 years of research on the tree bear possibility by Taylor Fleming, John Craighead, and Tirtha Shrestha. From that research, the conclusion was that the Asiatic black bear, when about 2 years old, spends time in trees to avoid attack by larger male bears on the ground. During this period, young bears train their inner claw outward, allowing an opposable grip. The imprint in the snow of the hind paw coming over the front paw that appears to have a hallux, especially when the bear is going slightly uphill so that the hind paw print extends over print backward, makes a hominid appearing track, both in that it's elongated like a human foot but with a thumb, and in that a 4-footed animal's gait now appears bipedal. This Yeti discovery, in the words of National Geographic magazine editor Bill Garrett, on-site research sweeps away much of the smoke and mirrors and gives us a believable Yeti. The fieldwork in Nepal's Barron Valley led directly to the initiation of the Makalu Barron National Park that protected over 500,000 acres in 1991, and across the border with China in the Tibetan Autonomous Region that protected over 6 million acres. In the words of Honorary President of the American Alpine Club, Robert H. Bates, this Yeti discovery has apparently solved the mystery of the Yeti, or at least part of it, and in doing so added to the world's great wildlife preserves, so that the shy animal and the mysteries and myths of the Himalayas that it represents can continue to live within a protected area nearly the size of Switzerland. In 2003, Japanese researcher and mountaineer Dr. Makoto Nobuka published the results of his 12-year linguistic study, postulating that the word Yeti is a corruption of the word Meti, a regional dialect term for a bear. Nobuka claims that ethnic Tibetans fear and worship the bear as a supernatural being. Nobuka's claims were subject to almost immediate criticism, and he was accused of linguistic carelessness. Dr. Raj Kumar Pandey, who has researched both Yetis and mountain languages, said it is not enough to blame tales of the mysterious beast of the Himalayas on words that rhyme but mean different things. Some speculate that these reported creatures could be present-day specimens of the extinct giant ape Gigantopithecus. However, the Yeti is generally described as bipedal, and most scientists believe Gigantopithecus to have been quadrupedal, and so massive that unless it evolved specifically as a bipedal ape like the hominids, walking upright would have been even more difficult for the now extinct primate than it is for its extant quadrupedal relative, the orangutan. In 2013, a call was put out by scientists from the universities of Oxford and Lausanne for people claiming to have samples from these sorts of creatures. A mitochondrial DNA analysis of the 12S RNA gene was undertaken on samples of hair from an unidentified animal from Ladakh in northern India and the west of the Himalayas, and one from Bhutan. These samples were compared with those in GenBank, the international repository of gene sequences, and matched with an example from an ancient polar bear jawbone found in Svalbard, Norway, that dates back to between 40,000 and 120,000 years ago. The result suggests that, barring hoaxes of planted samples or contamination, bears in these regions may have been taken to be Yeti. Professor of evolutionary genetics at the University of Cambridge, Bill Amos, doubted the samples were of polar bears in the Himalayas, but was 90% convinced that there is a bear in these regions that has been mistaken for a Yeti. Professor Brian Sykes, whose team carried out the analysis of the samples at Oxford, has his own theory. He believes that the samples may have come from a hybrid species of bear produced from a mating between a brown bear and a polar bear. A research of 12S or RNA published in 2015 revealed that the hair samples collected are most likely those of brown bears. In 2017, a new analysis compared mitochondrial DNA sequences of bears from the region with DNA extracted from hair and other samples claimed to have come from Yeti. It included hair thought to be from the same preserved specimen as the anomalous Sykes sample and showed it to have been a Himalayan brown bear, while other purported Yeti samples were actually from the Tibetan blue bear, Asiatic black bear, and a domestic dog. In 2017, Daniel C. Taylor published a comprehensive analysis of the century-long Yeti literature, giving added evidence to the Ursus tibetanus explanation, building on the initial Barron Valley discoveries. This book gave a meticulous explanation for the iconic Yeti footprint photographed by Eric Shipton in 1950, the 1972 Cronin McNeely print, as well as other unexplained Yeti footprints. To complete this explanation, Taylor also located a never-before-published photograph in the archives of the Royal Geographical Society, taken in 1950 by Eric Shipton, that included scratches that are clearly bear nail marks.
If you like that, then check out our Patreon, where for just $5 a month you get access to exclusive shows like Real Monsters and Playing with Bones with Amy Rose, along with early access to all our minisodes and ad-free access to the Weekend Update and It's Alive! Not convinced yet? Well, head on over now and have 7 days on us. That's a 7-day free trial for all new members. That's It's Alive Pod on Patreon. It's Alive! All the guts and go with none of the guilt. See you on Wednesdays, unless you're on Patreon when you get us all week long.